Hello everyone, this is Wy'Kia and this is 5-Minute Meals, the show where I basically create an entire meal that costs less than $5 to make. And on this episode, I will be making Brussels sprouts with rice. Maybe not the most appetizing title, but I do promise that Brussels sprouts with rice not only brings great flavor, but it's also a light dish on any days where you're feeling a little heavy or a little bloated. Not only is this dish light on your stomach, but the entire dish is vegan, which for me is something that I consider important because I am trying to incorporate less meat in some of my dishes. So this is a good beginning dish to do so. Not only is this dish simple on your stomach, it's also very simple to cook. Your three main ingredients are going to be garlic, Brussels sprouts, and rice. And all together, when I went to the store, this cost me about $3.83, so we're definitely under that $5 budget. So first we have our garlic. Now I have an entire bulb, so I'm going to break this down into about 3 pieces. Use as much or as little garlic as you like, but personally I like a good amount of garlic in my food, so I like to add like a little more when possible. Now there are 3 ways that you can cut garlic, so I'm going to show you each way. The first is just generally peeling it. As you can see, it's taking me quite a while to peel this garlic, and that's because this way is honestly the most difficult I've found in my experience when it comes to garlic peeling. And we're still going, and now we're done. The second way is quicker, and it's just cutting off the end of the garlic. So there's usually a little woody bit at the end, and you're going to cut that off. It's going to save you time later on in the cutting process when you'll have to get rid of it, and then you'll peel from that. This is much easier than the first way, but again, as you can see, I'm still partially struggling. But eventually the garlic clove is peeled. Now the third, which is my favorite, is the process of smashing the garlic and peeling it. Now for this, you can either use your knife or your palm. For your knife, you would use the flat of the blade, and then you would smash it with your palm to break it. Or you could use your palm and do the same thing for it. Now today, although I really love using my palm to smash garlic, I'm just gonna be using my knife, and you see how I do it. I messed up the first time, so we're going to redo it because you basically want the clove to be at least somewhat broken, not completely. And after that, it should be much easier and very simple to take off the peel for it. Now that said, we're going to be roughly chopping our garlic into smallish pieces. They don't have to be completely invisible to dissipate in the oil, because firstly, I like seeing garlic in my things, so I'm just going to roughly chop this. I'm not too concerned about uniformity in this recipe, as long as they're basically the same size, because you just have to watch out to make sure they all cook around the same time. And after that's done, I'm going to place all my garlic in a bowl to the side. For the next one, we'll be working on our Brussels sprouts. I've just finished rinsing them, and so I'm going to basically cut each of them in half. Now when you cut your Brussels sprouts, make sure you cut them vertically and not horizontally. This way makes it a whole lot easier to eat, because if you do it the other way, the Brussels sprouts might be a bit too tough. So after you cut them all, make sure you cut the ends and then cut them in half. And I'm just going to repeat the process for the rest of these Brussels sprouts. Notice how on a few of these leaves are starting to fall off. We're just going to be peeling off the leaves and putting them to the side. We will not be using those leaves in this dish. Now that that's done, I'll be soaking my Brussels sprouts again. Not for long, just I want to raise the water level enough so that way leaves that might be loose or falling off can float to the top. For those, you would take those out and discard them and put them with the rest of the leaves. And now that my Brussels sprouts are rinsed, what I'll be doing is seasoning it first with olive oil as a marinade of sorts. Then I'll be adding salt for flavor. And then finally I'll be adding pepper. And after this is all done, I'll be mixing it together with my hands until everything's well incorporated. Now our last step of preparation is the rice. Now what we're going to do for this is we're going to wash it a few times to get rid of some of the starchy layers on top. And we're going to do this about 3 to 4 times, basically filling up the water, moving it around a little bit, and then pouring back out. Now I do this so the rice doesn't end up too sticky. And no, the water will never end up clear no matter how hard you try, so don't try to do that. Just rinse about 2 to 3 times so you can get some of that starch off. Now that all of our ingredients are officially prepared, let's get start with cooking. Now what we're going to do for this, because time is kind of sensitive with this, is we're going to be cooking the rice first. That way that can definitely fully cook before we ever put it in a pan, because we will be putting this rice in this pan afterwards. So I'm going to go heat up the rice, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to toast it instead of just directly heating it up. This adds a little bit of flavor, it browns up the rice a bit, and it gives it a different texture than you would otherwise. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil in the pan, and then after that heats up a bit, I'm going to put the rice in. I'm going to stay there and stir, look at it, watch it as it slowly gets more brown. Throughout the entire cooking process, this should take about 5 minutes until you start to see a lot more brown bits. And after the rice is properly toasted, we're going to be pouring water into it and let that cook away until it's done. And now that our rice is done, we're going to be putting it off to the side for now. Next, let's move on to our Brussels sprouts. For our Brussels sprouts, I will be using a non-stick pan, and I will be putting a little bit of oil in here, just enough to vaguely cover the bottom of the pan. Then I will be applying all of my Brussels sprouts face down. Yes, I know it takes some time to do it, as you see here. I do want these Brussels sprouts to be nice and brown in the same way they would if I would have roasted them. So I have decided to take the time to properly lay out everything. And I'll let this cook for about 7 to 8 minutes. Make sure you check it to make sure that the Brussels sprouts don't start burning, but it's still a nice brown, as you can see here. Maybe a bit too dark, which is probably why I'm rushing at this stage. And in my vague rushing, I've decided to shake the pan to move things around, and then I officially took the time to flip everything upside down. Now at this rate, I know the pan is hot, so this is why this second half doesn't really take that long. So after a few minutes of letting the other side begin to brown, I have discarded all of my Brussels sprouts and put them in a bowl. Next, I have used the minced garlic from earlier and I have put them in the hot oil. As you can see, they're toasting pretty quickly, so I've decided to lower the heat on my stove a bit so that way it doesn't start burning. And as the garlic has all reached like a golden, dark golden brown, I have added my rice to the pan. So at this point you want to stir your rice. You want to make sure the garlic is properly mixed in together, and you're going to let this sit together, hopefully get a little bit brown at the bottom. So when it comes to the rice, you can in theory season this however you want to. It just depends on what spices you have available at your house. For me, I like to put cayenne, at least a dash of cayenne in almost everything. So I add some cayenne and some thyme because those are two spices I think would go very well for this. Feel free to add whatever you want, but I do recommend adding something with a little bit more acidity. That could be a nice contrast in your dish. For me, I've also decided to use a dash of lemon juice to help lighten up the dish. After about 2 to 3 minutes, then you're going to add your Brussels sprouts. Mix again so everything's nicely mixed. And after a while, you're going to flatten it out and let everything sit for a bit, and letting the rice and Brussels sprouts at the bottom get a little bit more brown. And as this all cooks and mixed together, make sure you're stirring it and make sure everything's nicely incorporated. And after a bit, once your rice starts to change color from being more of a white rice to being more of a golden brown, then that's how you know your dish is done. So I'm going to put my Brussels sprouts in the bowl, and that is how you make Brussels sprouts with rice. And there you have it, Brussels sprouts with rice. What I love about this, it's so light. So let's say if you had a day where you're really full, you really don't feel like eating, but you know you still need to eat something. This is definitely perfect for that. It's not really heavy, it's a very light meal. So for me right now, to be honest, I'm not feeling that hungry, but I definitely would continue to eat this because it does give me nutrients and food, which is always good. But it doesn't quite overwhelm my stomach, which is why I really enjoy cooking this. So yeah, thank you for watching 5-Minute Meals with Wy'Kia, and now hopefully I'll see you next month with my next episode. Bye.